Hey guys, tonight we're heading into something colder, louder, and significantly more explosive than usual. A place where sleep is a rumour, comfort is a myth, and your toes are planning their resignation. Welcome to the Battle of the Bulge, the largest and deadliest American land battle of World War II. But forget the documentaries and noble speeches. You're not General Patton charging in with a tank column. You're Private You. Cold, exhausted, underfed, and very replaceable. Before we start, do the usual stuff. Like the video. Maybe subscribe if you enjoy being walked slowly through historical trauma. And drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. Always fun to know who else is out there not sleeping with us. Now, dim the lights, maybe get under a blanket, preferably not one made of World War II surplus wool, and let the ambient hum of imaginary mortar fire lull you into a reluctant sense of historical dread. Because tonight, you're not in your bed. You're in Belgium. It's December 1944. You're 19. And the good news is, you haven't been shot yet. The bad news is everything else. You've just been deployed to the front lines of one of the coldest winters in European history. The German army has launched a surprise offensive through the Ardennes forest, and you, lucky soul, are smack in the middle of it. You've been issued a rifle that jams when it's too cold, boots that leak when they're too wet, and a uniform that hasn't been updated since 1942. You thought joining the army might be a ticket to adventure. Turns out, it's mostly trench foot, canned meat, and watching your friends try to boil snow without catching fire. And no, there's no warm barracks waiting for you. There's no coffee percolating in the background. There's just snow, trees, and a vague sense that the guy next to you is about to start crying and blame it on the wind. So, get ready, because your day in the Battle of the Bulge is about to begin. And unlike in the movies, you don't get dramatic music, a slow-motion hero moment, or a guaranteed return trip. Just freezing air, bad intel, and a strong chance your socks are currently frozen to your skin. Congratulations, you've arrived in Belgium. It's December 16th, 1944, and you're officially part of the most unexpected, poorly timed, and absolutely miserable military campaign you never asked for, the Battle of the Bulge. Named not for anything heroic, but for the literal bulge it made in Allied front lines. Your unit? Some tired branch of the US Army that hasn't seen a shower or morale in weeks. Your rank? Low enough that no one will remember your name if this goes sideways, which it probably will. You've been told it's just routine holding duty. Hold the line, keep the roads clear, wait for spring. What they didn't tell you is that the Germans have just launched a massive counter-offensive through the Ardennes forest, with tanks, SS units, and more artillery than you've seen in your entire enlistment. Surprise. You're standing ankle deep in snow that hasn't melted since Napoleon had good press. The trees around you are skeletal and creaking like haunted telephone poles. It's about 4 a.m, though time here doesn't really matter anymore. Daylight and darkness blur into one endless stretch of freezing grey. Your breath fogs up the inside of your helmet liner. Yes, you're wearing your helmet while trying to sleep, because shrapnel doesn't care that you're tired. Your hands don't work properly. They've turned into stiff, uncooperative meat claws, wrapped in whatever gloves supply forgot to replace back in Paris. Your fingers are cracked, raw, and perpetually damp. You haven't been dry since November. You've stopped dreaming about warmth. At this point, you'd settle for not visibly steaming, when you exhale. The gear you were issued was technically winter ready. For a winter in Georgia, maybe. Your overcoat is thin. Your boots are standard issue and might as well be made of sponges soaked in disappointment. The rubber soles are frozen solid. The leather cracks every time you move. There are rumours going around about some lucky units receiving actual winter boots, but you're not one of them. You're part of the group testing the theory that toes are optional. You try stomping your feet in place to keep circulation going. It doesn't help. All it does is wake up the guy next to you, who immediately calls you something vulgar and curls deeper into his damp blanket. You both know you're not going back to sleep. No one really sleeps anymore. You just close your eyes and hope you're not on watch duty when the next artillery shell lands in your zip code. The landscape around you is pretty, if you ignore the part where it's trying to kill you. Rolling white hills, dense pine forest. Quiet little villages filled with civilians who stopped smiling about 3 invasions ago. Every path looks like it leads to a postcard, until the tanks show up. Then it all looks like a funeral program. You haven't bathed in 10 days. There's a certain musk about you now. A blend of old wool, unbrushed teeth, and fear. You've stopped noticing it, but the lice haven't. They're having a holiday feast on your scalp, your armpits, and probably the waistband of your long johns, which haven't been changed since you crossed into Luxembourg. When the wind kicks up, it's like being slapped by a frozen ghost. It whistles through your coat, up your sleeves, down your spine. It's not just cold anymore. It's intimate. It crawls inside you, sets up camp in your lungs, and starts filing eviction notices to your willpower. Your lips are cracked, your cheeks are windburned, and your nose has frozen, thawed, and refrozen so many times it now crunches slightly when you touch it. Breakfast is a joke. A cold can of meat product labelled spam in optimistic lettering, paired with a piece of what used to be bread, and now qualifies more as a weapon. You don't chew it so much as resent it into smaller pieces. Coffee, if you're lucky, is lukewarm sludge in a dented canteen cup with grounds floating on top, like dirt in a pond. You try not to think about the fact that it tastes better than dinner did last night. It's not that the food is bad. It's that everything else makes the food worse. You were issued a rifle, the M1 Garand. It's supposed to be reliable, except when it isn't. Right now, it's so cold the metal sticks to your gloves, or your fingers, or your face if you're not careful. You've already seen one guy peel a chunk of skin off his cheek because he leaned against it without thinking. The clip ejects with a ping when it's empty, which normally wouldn't matter, except the Germans can hear it and know you're out of ammo. Great design feature. Practically a self-reporting system for "please shoot me now." There are rumours of Germans disguised as American soldiers, sneaking through checkpoints, giving wrong directions, changing signs. Now every time someone asks for the password, you freeze, wondering if they're the one who's supposed to be here. The paranoia spreads faster than the cold. You don't trust anyone who shaves, speaks fluent English, or has dry socks. You hear something in the distance. It might be gunfire, might be thunder, might be your imagination. Doesn't matter. You check your gear anyway. That's what you do here. You check your gear, you watch the trees, and you wait. For orders, for mail, for the weather to get worse. You wait for something to happen that won't be worse than what's already happening. So far, no luck. You've been told reinforcements are coming, that the weather will break. That command has a plan, but none of those things are here right now. What's here is you, in the woods, in the snow, slowly losing track of how many days you've gone without seeing anything that wasn't white, grey or olive drab. Someone next to you starts coughing. It's wet, deep, and not encouraging. He waves it off like it's nothing. You both know it's probably something, but what are you going to do? There's no medic nearby. There's barely a fire. You adjust your scarf, which is really just a rag someone's mom mailed 2 months ago, and try not to think about your own lungs making similar sounds last night. The latrine, by the way, doesn't exist. You walk a few yards away, dig a hole, do your business in 10 degrees, and try not to lose a finger while buttoning back up. Hygiene is a theoretical concept now. You wipe with snow, grit your teeth, and return to your hole in the ground. If you're lucky, the Germans don't catch you with your pants down. Literally. Your sergeant walks by, muttering something about staying alert. He looks like a man who hasn't blinked since Bastogne. His uniform is soaked from the knees down. His cigarette is out, and his sense of humour froze to death 2 weeks ago. You nod like you heard what he said. He nods back like he didn't care anyway. A plane flies overhead. You squint up, but it's too high to tell if it's friendly. Doesn't matter. If it drops a bomb, it drops a bomb. If it doesn't, that's tomorrow's problem. You hunker back into your foxhole, pull your collar higher, and let the snow slowly bury your boots. Again. Time moves strangely out here. An hour feels like a week. A day disappears if nothing explodes. You've stopped writing in your notebook. There's nothing new to say. Still here. Still cold. Still waiting. At some point, you wonder if you've frozen in place. Like some kind of olive drab statue of regret. And just when you think maybe, just maybe, it can't get worse, someone calls out for firewatch. You draw the short straw, of course you do. You stand, stretch, sort of, and trudge out into the snow again. Rifle over your shoulder, boots crunching softly in the dark. The sky above is moonlit, cloudy, and vast. Somewhere out there, thousands of men are trying to kill each other in the dark. And you get to be one of them. Still, you tell yourself it's fine. Just a little more cold. Just a few more hours. Just one more patrol. You keep moving because standing still is surrender. You keep breathing, even when your lungs protest. You keep going, because that's what everyone else is doing. And if you stop, the snow wins. Tomorrow you're told you'll move positions. Deeper into the forest, closer to the action, the line is shifting, supplies are late, tanks are stuck. But you're going, because orders don't freeze. And neither do bullets. So you finish your watch, you return to your frozen dent in the ground, and you wait for morning. Not because it brings warmth, but because it's not night anymore. And sometimes that's enough. There's no building, no roof, no door to close, no heater humming quietly in the corner. Your barracks, as they call it, is a foxhole, dug by hand, in ice, with a shovel that feels like it was designed more for breaking spirits than moving dirt. 2 feet wide, maybe 3 feet deep, if you got lucky and hit a patch of soft mud before the frost took over. It's shaped vaguely like a grave, which is ironic only until you realise how accurate that is. You share it with another guy. His name might be Eddie, or Freddie, or something with a Y at the end. You stopped asking after the 3rd day. He snores like a dying engine, and hasn't spoken a full sentence since his best friend got shipped to a field hospital with pneumonia. He sleeps curled up in the bottom corner of the hole, layered in wool and regret, holding his rifle like it might start purring if he pets it enough. Above you, snow falls in thick, silent clumps. It gathers on your helmet, melts just enough to seep into your collar, and then freezes again, locking itself into your uniform like some sort of punishment from the weather gods. You try brushing it off, but it doesn't matter. The snow always wins. It's in your boots, your gloves, the folds of your underwear, your food, your thoughts. You've stopped hating it. Now it's just part of the team. You were issued a canvas shelter half. It's a triangle of fabric about the size of a beach towel, designed to be snapped together with another guy's half to form a tiny tent. But tents require time, space, and enough dry ground to pretend you have options. Instead, your shelter half is stretched over a few sticks above your foxhole, sagging under the weight of snow and the crushing knowledge that it won't stop anything. Rain gets in. Snow gets in. Occasionally, something larger thuds onto it, and you pray it's not a frozen squirrel falling out of a tree again. The walls of the hole are lined with whatever you could scavenge. Logs, rocks, tin cans. You jammed some burlap sacks in there to keep the dirt from caving in, but it mostly just made the whole place smell like damp potatoes and burnt gun oil. Your blanket, if you can even call it that, is more of a wool-scented punishment. It holds moisture like a sponge, and warmth like a screen door. You've wrapped it around your feet, your shoulders, your rifle, sometimes all at once, trying to trick yourself into feeling something besides numb. Sleeping in the hole is an experience in controlled hypothermia. You lie on your side to conserve heat, knees tucked up, boots still on because taking them off is a one-way ticket to frostbite. Your breath creates a little cloud inside the tiny space, and when the wind picks up, it just whips right through the canvas and slaps you across the face. No matter how you position yourself, part of you is always touching something wet. The ground, your gear, your own sweat. There's no dry, there's only less wet. You've tried to make it more livable. You carved out a ledge to store your helmet, dug a little shelf for extra ammo, arranged some pine branches at the bottom so you're not lying directly on frozen mud. But they've all frozen solid into the ground, fused together like part of a primitive art installation made entirely out of things that hate you. It's not a foxhole anymore. It's just where you exist now. A rectangular imprint of despair, softened slightly by layers of snow and human body heat. It floods when it rains. Not all at once, just a slow, creeping rise of icy slush that seeps in through the cracks. You've woken up twice with your legs submerged. The first time you panicked. The second time, you just sighed and rolled over. There's no such thing as dry gear anymore, just degrees of soaking. Your socks haven't been properly wrung out since last week. You don't remember what they looked like before they became permanently folded canvases of mildew and threadbare resignation. There's always noise even when it's quiet. The snow muffles a lot, but you still hear the distant thud of artillery. Not close enough to worry you, not far enough to forget. Sometimes you hear muffled yelling from another foxhole. Sometimes laughter. Usually coughing. Always coughing. You hear branches crack under the weight of snow. You hear your own heart beating when it gets too quiet. And you wonder how loud it would sound if a shell landed 10 feet to your left. You try to write letters here. It's a joke, really. Your pencil is dull, your fingers are numb, and the paper is damp no matter how well you hide it. You scribble down a few sentences that start with, "Don't worry about me," and end with lies about morale and hot meals. You try to remember what your mum's kitchen smells like, but all you can recall is the scent of gun oil, unwashed uniforms, and cigarettes someone smuggled in from Paris. You fold the paper, shove it in your jacket, and tell yourself you'll finish it tomorrow. You won't. You've memorised every inch of the foxhole, the knot in the canvas, the way the snow drips from the corner, the spot where the mud always squishes louder when you shift your weight. You've counted the ammo in your bandolier 12 times. You've cleaned your rifle so often the stock is starting to wear thin from over-polishing. Not because you care, but because doing something is better than doing nothing. Stillness feels like surrender. Movement feels like madness. You try to balance somewhere in the middle. Sometimes someone from another unit comes by, checks your status, mutters a curse, and moves on. No one stays long, no one has answers. You ask about reinforcements, supplies, hot food. They just shake their head or mumble something about weather delays and keep walking. You stop asking. You've watched guys crack here. Not loud, not dramatic. Just a quiet unravelling. They stare at nothing. Stop responding. Some of them start laughing at jokes that weren't funny. Others get mean. You're not sure which one you're becoming. You just hope it's not the kind that makes command send you back wrapped in canvas. Rats show up sometimes. Usually at night, big ones, bold. They know you won't chase them. They scurry around your boots, gnaw on ration crumbs. Sometimes stare at you like they're waiting for you to die first. You don't even bother anymore. You just shift slightly so they don't crawl into your armpit and keep staring into the dark, waiting for morning. Not because it brings relief, but because it means you survived another night. You still get scared. Every sound could be something. Every quiet moment could explode. But the fear changes. It becomes familiar. Routine. Like the cold. Like the hole. You learn to live with it the way you live with trench foot, and the knowledge that your name doesn't really matter to anyone beyond the guys in your squad. And half of them are new replacements who haven't even memorised the foxhole layout yet. You try not to think about how this ends. You've heard rumours of a counterattack, of armour divisions pushing through the snow, of planes when the sky clears, bringing hell down on the German lines. But that's all distant, abstract. What's real is the snow, the hunger, the stench of unwashed men packed into holes across the forest, hoping the shells don't land on their side tonight. Your foxhole is not a barracks. It's not even shelter. It's a suggestion of safety, a shallow argument against shrapnel, a place where you pretend you have a home for 8 minutes of fitful sleep before the next patrol, the next barrage, the next order to pack up and move to another patch of snow. You'll learn to hate just as much. And you do it, because you don't have a choice, because the guy next to you is still breathing, because the radio hasn't said otherwise, because no one has rotated you out, because the war doesn't care that you're tired. So you stay in your hole, you pull the blanket tighter, you count the hours, you wait for a sky that might never clear, in a war that doesn't pause just because your feet are numb. And soon it'll be time to go on patrol. Again? Morning doesn't arrive like it does back home. There's no sunrise gently peeking through your curtains. No birds chirping. No alarm clock that you can slap into silence and ignore for 10 more minutes. Out here, morning just sort of happens. The grey gets slightly less black. The cold doesn't leave. It just becomes more visible. And your stomach, for reasons unknown, decides to remind you that you're alive by growling loud enough to annoy whoever's still trying to pretend they're asleep in the hole next to you. You don't stretch when you wake up. There's no room. And also, every joint is frozen in place, like your bones have signed some kind of labour strike. Your back hurts, your legs ache, and your neck is stuck at a weird angle from spending the night wedged between your rifle and a pile of damp boots. Breakfast is the only thing even resembling a routine. And calling it breakfast is generous. Extremely generous. First, you dig out the rations. If you're lucky, it's a C ration. If you're not lucky, it's a leftover from yesterday that someone forgot to throw away. It comes in a tin can, because of course it does, and it's roughly the same temperature as the snow you're sitting on. You hold it between your palms, hoping to warm it up a few degrees with body heat. It never works. The can is labelled something optimistic like meat and beans or chopped ham and eggs. That's not what it is. What it is a cold, congealed brick of confusion suspended in a jelly-like substance that smells vaguely of old socks and army guilt. Opening the can is a process. You don't get a modern pull tab. You get a dull can opener attached to your keychain that hasn't worked right since basic training. Your gloves are too thick to use it, your fingers too numb to go barehanded, and there's a very real chance you'll cut yourself just trying to peel back the lid. But you do it anyway, because hunger has lower standards than pride. Inside is something. The contents wiggle slightly when you jab it with your spoon, like it's considering fighting back. You take a bite. It's cold. It's grainy. It tastes like a dare. You chew, sort of. Mostly you just mash it into something less solid and hope your stomach will deal with the consequences. You don't savour it. You don't even taste it after the first bite. You just get through it. Like paperwork or dental surgery. There's a cracker in there too, technically a biscuit. It was probably fresh in 1942. Now it's a chalky slab of compressed despair that turns to dust the moment it hits your tongue. You need water to swallow it, but your canteen is frozen shut. You forgot to keep it tucked in your coat overnight, so the water inside is now a solid cylinder of ice, mocking you through the metal. You smack it against your knee a few times. Nothing. You hold it near the fire, if your unit's lucky enough to have one going. The fire is just a few twigs and a vague prayer. The canteen thaws slightly, enough for a few sips of lukewarm metallic misery. If there's coffee, it comes in powder form. You dump it into your cup and add snow. That's right, snow. Because who needs clean water when you've got a field full of frozen ground and optimism? You stir it with the handle of your spoon, wait for it to get sort of slushy, then take a sip and pretend it's helping. It's not. It's bitter. It's gritty. It might be coffee. It might also be a mix of dirt and melted ration salt. You don't care anymore. Some rations come with a small tin of fruit cocktail. These are gold. Not because the fruit is good. It isn't. But because it's not meat. It's not beige. And it has sugar. You crack one open and find tiny cubes of things that might have once been pears or peaches. You can't really tell. They've been sitting in syrup for so long they've started to taste like the can itself. But it's sweet. And for 15 seconds, you remember what dessert used to feel like. Then it's gone, and you're licking the lid like a raccoon at a picnic. Every now and then someone breaks out a packet of powdered milk. Don't ask how they got it. Probably a supply error. You mix it with cold water and try to pretend it's creamy. It's not. It tastes like sadness filtered through chalk. But it's different, and different is currency out here. One guy trades a packet of instant cocoa for a half pack of smokes. Someone else offers up a fruit bar, hard as a rock and darker than your mood, in exchange for one of those toilet paper rolls that comes in the ration box. Barter economy in its purest form. You look around and see everyone else doing the same thing, hunched over their tins, eating in silence. Some guys are laughing, but it's that hollow, automatic kind of laugh. The kind that covers up the fact that you can't feel your feet and someone down the line just lost 3 fingers to frostbite. The guy across from you is chewing with his eyes closed, not because he's savouring anything, but because if he opens them, he might have to look at what he's eating. Breakfast doesn't last long. There's not much to eat, and no one wants to linger. You toss the empty can into a pile near the Foxhole, the army version of a trash heap. It'll be picked up later, or maybe never. You wipe your spoon on your pant leg. Clean enough. The grease just adds to the insulation. Someone pulls out a cigarette. They all smell the same, like damp paper and cheap tobacco. But it's the closest thing you've got to an after-meal ritual. You take a drag. It burns the back of your throat in a familiar way. It's warm, sort of, briefly, and then it's gone. You flick the ash into the snow and watch it vanish without a trace. Nobody talks much after breakfast. What would you even say? That was the best meat-adjacent slop I've eaten out of a dented tin can this week. No one's pretending anymore. Breakfast isn't a morale booster. It's just a pause between suffering and more suffering. A biological necessity that reminds you you're still here, still cold, and still capable of feeling slightly worse than yesterday. You pack your gear, carefully, slowly. The wrappers go into your bag, the spoon into your pocket, the canteen back under your coat, where it will at least have a chance of staying liquid for another few hours. Your rifle is next. You wipe the condensation off the bolt, eject the clip, reload it, and sling it back over your shoulder. You don't need orders, you already know what's coming. Another march, another patrol, another foxhole waiting somewhere else in the trees. The air is sharper now, the kind of cold that cuts into your throat when you breathe too fast. You can feel your stomach start to protest the meal. Not violently, just enough to remind you that your digestive system has filed a formal complaint and expects no resolution. You glance down at the remains of your breakfast, the crusted edge of the can, a few crumbs in your lap, the metallic taste still clinging to your teeth, and you try to remember what real food tastes like. Pancakes, bacon, toast with butter, eggs that don't jiggle, coffee that doesn't crunch. But memory is dangerous out here. It gets in the way of the next thing. And there's always a next thing, so you adjust your helmet, tighten your scarf, and start moving, because breakfast is over, the cold isn't. And the forest doesn't care how full you are. There's no real undressing and redressing in the Ardennes. You sleep in your uniform, you eat in your uniform, you dig holes in your uniform, you bleed in it. Eventually, you'll be buried in it. The idea of getting dressed implies a fresh start, maybe even a change of clothes. That's not what's happening here. You're layering misery on top of older, smellier misery, and pretending it still counts as preparation. You start the process by peeling back your blanket, which has frozen into a rigid half circle shaped exactly like your body. Every move sends a small avalanche of snow into the foxhole. You're already shivering, and the wind hasn't even hit you yet. Your fingers are stiff. Your knees crack. Your shoulders ache from sleeping in a fetal position, designed more for containment than comfort. Your base layer is long underwear, technically. It was white once, maybe. Now it's stained with weeks of sweat, soot, dirt, and whatever bacteria have decided to claim your thighs as their permanent residence. You haven't removed it in days, maybe weeks. The fabric is rough, tight in the wrong places, and loose in the others. The elastic gave up sometime around Bastogne, but it's warm, not because it's well insulated, but because it's holding in about a gallon of trapped body heat and regret. Over that goes your wool shirt. It's itchy, it's heavy. It smells like an old couch dragged through a fireplace. You've stopped scratching at the seams because your skin gave up and went numb. The sweat has frozen into tiny salt crystals in the folds of the collar. You brush some of it off, mostly out of habit. No one here cares what you look like. The lice certainly don't. Then comes the field jacket, standard issue, olive drab, stuffed with something that used to be insulation before it got wet for the 5th time, and flattened into a cold sponge. The zipper doesn't work anymore. The buttons do mostly. You skip the top too, because you can't get them closed with gloves on, and your fingers are too slow to do the job there. You shove a dirty scarf down your neck hole, and let it stick out like a limp piece of surrender. Your pants are wool, same as the shirt, stiff in the knees, crusty at the cuffs, and worn so thin on the seat that sitting down feels like placing your rear end on a frozen skillet. They sag in the back because the drawstring broke, and your belt, if you even have one, was made for someone with a waist 3 sizes smaller and a will to live. You've cinched it together with a piece of signal wire you pulled off a wrecked Jeep. It's holding. For now. Socks are a disaster. You're wearing 2 pairs, both damp. One's got a hole near the toe that's spreading like a slow-motion avalanche. You try rotating them every night. Not washing, just rotating. Left foot to right, inside out. Flip them around. It doesn't help. It just gives you the illusion of effort. Your toes feel like frozen sausages stuffed into wet burlap. You wiggle them while you get dressed, just to make sure they're still attached. Now the boots. Army-issue leather combat boots. In theory, designed for all terrain. In practice, designed to collect moisture and hold it hostage. The soles are separating at the heel. The laces are stiff and caked with mud that's long since turned to concrete. You can't get them fully tight because the eyelets are bent, and you've had to rethread the lace 3 times with the end of a paperclip. Once they're on, your feet feel heavier than your rifle. The leather creaks when you move, not because it's well worn, but because it's pleading for death. Gloves are a joke. You got mittens once. Wool. They got soaked the first night. Now they live at the bottom of your pack, frozen into a clump that you're afraid might bite you. The gloves you're using now came from someone who froze to death 2 foxholes over. You didn't ask. They didn't need them anymore. They're fingerless. The fabric is threadbare. Your fingertips are exposed to the wind, the snow, and the vague sensation that you're becoming part of the landscape. You've wrapped a strip of cloth around your ears. Not because it helps, but because the wind keeps trying to take the top of your head with it. Your helmet goes on last. It's dented from a fall 2 days ago. The chin strap is too tight, but you wear it anyway. You don't want to be the guy who catches shrapnel because he wanted a looser fit. The liner smells like old soap and new sweat. It rattles slightly when you move your head. You pretend not to notice. There's no mirror, no inspection, no dressing room banter. You're getting dressed in a hole, surrounded by other men who are doing the same thing, all of you pretending this is normal. No one talks unless it's absolutely necessary. Someone coughs. Someone spits into the snow. Someone grunts and says their boots won't go on. Someone else says, "Then die barefoot." Nobody laughs. You don't change clothes. You add to them. You layer more misery on top of old misery and hope your body stops complaining. There's no backup uniform. If something rips, you patch it with tape or prayer. If something freezes, you wear it anyway. Laundry is a myth. Soap is luxury. Your entire wardrobe fits into one pack that you haven't opened since the last time the sun came out. Everything smells. You smell. The guys next to you smell. The Foxhole smells. It's a mixture of wet wool, mould, unwashed skin, gunpowder, grease, and something sweet that might be rot. You've stopped trying to place it. Your nose barely works in this cold anyway. You do a final check. Ammo pouch is full. Canteen secured. Knife in place. Rifle slung across your chest, already frosting over near the barrel. You flex your hands. You adjust your helmet. You take one slow, bitter breath. You're dressed, not for success, not for warmth, not even for survival. You're dressed for endurance, for slow, grinding movement through ice and snow and trees and whatever's on the other side of that ridgeline. You're dressed for a war that doesn't care how prepared you are. And now someone's yelling your name. Probably. It's hard to hear over the wind. Time to move. Your feet crunch in the snow. Your coat catches on a branch. Your gloves soak up another handful of slush. It's not even dawn yet. You're sweating already, and freezing at the same time. So you walk. Not because you want to, but because standing still means the cold gets to win. Again. The army didn't assign you roommates. Not officially. But somewhere between digging your first foxhole and losing your third pair of socks to frostbite, they moved in anyway. Quietly, persistently, without permission or paperwork. And now, they're here, full-time tenants. Welcome to the infestation. First, the lice. They're not shy. They don't hide. They've colonised your body like it's Normandy, and they're winning. You feel them under your collar, behind your ears, in the seams of your underwear. At night they throw a party in your armpits. During the day they migrate, looking for fresh real estate between your shoulders and the back of your knees. They don't bite and leave. They bite and settle down, raise a family, and invite their extended relatives. You've stopped scratching because it doesn't do anything. All it does is remind you that your skin has become a buffet line. Everyone has them. The new guys pretend they don't, but after 3 days in the snow with no change of clothes, their pride gives out. You see them swatting, digging, muttering to themselves. Eventually, you just accept it. The lice aren't guests, they're part of your unit. Delousing stations exist, supposedly. You've heard rumours of powder, of hot water, of someone with actual tweezers. You've never seen one. Your solution is simple. Slap at your collar every few minutes, hope for the best, and if you catch one, crush it between your fingers like a tiny declaration of war. It's the closest thing to a victory you'll get today. Then there are the rats, big ones, city rats, trained in urban warfare and not the least bit afraid of you. They move through the trenches like they own them. Quick, silent, brazen. You've woken up to one sitting on your boot, chewing through your ration tin like it's Christmas morning. Another time, you rolled over and felt one dart across your arm like it was late for a meeting. They steal whatever isn't nailed down. Food, bandages, cigarettes. One guy swore he saw one running off with someone's glove. You don't question it. The rats here aren't just pests, They're survivors, same as you, except smarter. They know where the bodies are buried, because sometimes they help do the burying. They nibble on fingers, noses, open wounds. They know you won't move fast enough to stop them. And they're right. You try to scare them off, bang your mess kit, throw a rock, pee in their path. It doesn't work. They look at you like you're the one who needs to find a new place to sleep. You've even named one, or maybe several, the same name. Sergeant Whiskers. A running joke? Kind of. You act like it's funny, but deep down you know he's probably seen more of this war than you have. The lice drain your will to keep itching. The rats steal your food, your sleep, and whatever boundary between human and animal you thought existed, but neither compares to the trees. Not the nice kind with shade and squirrels. The Ardennes forest is a whole different thing. Dense, endless, and full of death. At first you thought the trees might be an advantage. Cover from enemy fire, shelter from the wind, a little peace. But then the artillery started, and you learned about tree bursts. See, when a shell hits the ground, it explodes sideways. Shrapnel flies, dirt kicks up, maybe a few guys lose hearing or worse. But when a shell hits a tree, or explodes just above one, it turns the whole thing into a fragmentation grenade. The wood shreds into splinters the size of a pencil's and sharper than your bayonet. They rain down like jagged hail. They don't aim, they just fall. Through helmets, through shoulders, through whatever unlucky patch of Foxhole you happen to be crouching in. You can't hear them coming. 1 second you're squatting behind a log, the next you're wiping someone's blood off your cheek and realising it's not yours. The tree didn't explode, it got hit, but the explosion turned it into shrapnel. You flinch every time something cracks overhead now. A branch snaps under the weight of snow, and you duck. A bird takes off. You dive. It never stops. The ground around your hole is littered with the debris, branches broken off like brittle bones, chunks of bark lying in piles. The trunks are scarred with black scorch marks and deep gouges. Some trees have split completely, not from age but from blast pressure. You once saw a guy run into a tree for cover. Seconds later, the tree was gone. So was he. They don't talk about it in the briefings. There's no how to survive the forest turning on you section in the manual. All you get is a shovel, a helmet, and the hope that today's barrage misses your particular tree. At night, it's worse. You can't see anything. Every gust of wind sounds like a branch breaking. Every crack of ice sounds like incoming fire. You try to sleep, but even if you manage, the dreams are loud. Waking up doesn't help. The trees loom above you, shifting in the darkness, waiting. The lice don't sleep, the rats don't care, and the trees don't stop cracking. You're not afraid of the enemy. Not really. The Germans are out there, sure. But you can shoot at them. You can hide. You can pray for artillery support. What you can't fight are the things living in your clothes. The things gnawing at your supplies. The things falling from the sky in wooden, spinning death shards. You haven't changed socks in 4 days. You haven't stopped itching in 5. You've killed more rodents than you've seen enemy soldiers. And you can't walk more than 20 feet without looking up to make sure the canopy above you doesn't decide to fall. This isn't war like the posters showed. There's no glory here. No flags waving in the wind. Just you, curled in a muddy pit, flinching every time the snow rustles and wondering if that sound was a rat, a lice colony shift change, or the start of another artillery barrage about to turn your surroundings into a wooden meat grinder. You pull your scarf up. Not for warmth, but to keep your breath from fogging up. and giving your position away. Your glove twitches involuntarily. Another bite. You ignore it. You've gotten good at that. No one trained you for this. Not really. They trained you to march, to shoot, to obey. They didn't train you for what it feels like when the place you're supposed to be defending is trying to eat you alive one bite, one scratch, one splinter at a time, and tomorrow it'll all still be here. The lice, the rats, the trees, waiting. You've stopped wondering when it ends. Now you just wonder who's next. You notice it when your boots start to feel soft, not outside, but inside. Like the soles are melting, but they're not. What's melting is your sense of normal. You take a step and it squishes. Not loudly. Just enough to remind you that the socks you haven't changed in a week are now part sponge, part biohazard. You think about wringing them out. You don't. The water that comes out wouldn't be clean. It would be classified. Trench foot isn't an injury. It's a betrayal. Your own feet turn against you. Slowly. Silently. Without asking permission. At first it's just discomfort. Damp toes. A little cold. Then the tingling starts. Pins and needles. You wiggle your foot, trying to shake it off. You stomp. You slap your boot. Nothing. That's the first sign. The second is when you realise your foot has stopped hurting, because it can't feel anything anymore. The moisture doesn't come from rain. Not entirely. It comes from everything. Melting snow. Sweat. Slush leaking through seams in boots that weren't designed for winter. You've tried stuffing extra rags in there. You've tried wrapping your feet in whatever dry cloth you could scrounge up. If you could even find any, it didn't help. If anything, it just made the wetness warmer. Which is worse, because now your foot thinks it's safe. It's not. At night, you take your boots off. Maybe. If you're feeling brave. If you think you'll have time to dry them out by morning. If there isn't a patrol scheduled. If the rats aren't feeling aggressive. You peel them off slowly, the leather sticking to your socks like it knows what's coming. The smell hits first, like mould, vinegar, and regret. Your socks come off in pieces. The fabric clings to the skin, fusing slightly with the upper layer of what used to be a foot, and is now a half-cooked memory. The skin underneath is pale, puffy, wrinkled like something that drowned and came back just to disappoint you. You press a finger into your heel. The indent stays. Too long, that's not good. You dry them off. Not with a towel. You haven't seen one of those since the last functioning shower 3 countries ago. You use a piece of your shirt, a corner of a blanket, a newspaper clipping someone wrapped around a chocolate bar. You dab, not rub. Rubbing makes the skin slough off like boiled chicken. You learned that the hard way. Some guys have it worse. You've seen them hobble over to the medic with feet twice their normal size, wrapped in whatever they could find. One guy had newspaper in his boots. Another had cut strips from his tent cover. Didn't help. By the time they get to the aid station, assuming they even get there, their toes are black. Not bruised, dead. Frozen and rotting at the same time. If they're lucky, they get sent back. If they're not, the medic pulls the sock off and half their skin comes with it. There's no real treatment out here. The manual says to keep feet dry, change socks often, massage them. That's adorable. You have one extra pair of socks, buried in the bottom of your pack and already damp from the steam of your body heat. Massaging requires both hands, privacy, and the luxury of not holding a rifle. And the ground hasn't been dry since September. You try drying your boots by the fire. If there's even a fire, you prop them up on sticks. Watch the steam rise, smell the leather burn. Someone warns you not to get them too close. Melt the sole, and you're done. You pull them back, sigh, and slip them back on. Still wet, still heavy, still yours. You hear guys talking about amputation. Not as a joke, as a backup plan. If it gets worse, I'll lose the foot, one says, like he's scheduling a haircut. The others nod. No shock. No sympathy. Just facts. You get trench foot bad enough, and the choices narrow quickly. You can't march. You can't fight. You can't run. And if you can't do any of that, you're either getting sent home or getting left behind. There's no glamorous way to deal with it. No hero story about the guy who powered through gangrenous feet and saved his unit. If your toes go, you go. And no one blames you. Not really. They just don't want to see it. It reminds them of what's waiting at the bottom of their own boots. Some officers issue sock rotation schedules. You laugh. Then you realise they're serious. Change socks every 12 hours, they say. Like that'll fix the weather the mud and the military's idea of winter gear. You nod. Then go back to wrapping your toes in the same shirt sleeve you used yesterday. At some point, your foot starts leaking. Not a lot. Just a slow, warm ooze that soaks through the boot lining and adds another layer of damp to the already soaked interior. You press your hand against the top of the boot. It squelches. You stop pressing. The worst part isn't the pain. It's the smell. It sticks to you. Lingers in your foxhole. Clings to your sleeping bag. You dream about it. That sour fungal rot that creeps up through your socks, into your nose, into your thoughts. You wonder if you'll ever stop smelling it. Even after the war. Even if you make it out with all 10 toes still attached. Someone in your unit jokes that this is the army's version of a spa. Mud baths, constant steam, organic exfoliation. You don't laugh. Not because it isn't funny, but because you're busy squeezing half a cup of water out of your heel and wondering if that spot on your sock is blood, pus, or just another weird consequence of sleeping with your feet against a frozen log. They tell you to keep moving. That circulation helps. So you do. You walk. You trudge. You squish your way through snow, slush, and every bodily warning sign that says stop. You don't stop. You can't. Because stopping means letting the rot settle in, means letting the cold dig deeper, means you won't get back up. And so you walk. On feet that burn when they should be numb. On toes that no longer report back when you wiggle them. On soles that feel like they're padded with wet cardboard and broken glass. You know what's happening. You know where it leads. But you lace the boots tighter. Not because it helps, but because it's all you can do. You grip your rifle. You shoulder your pack. You limp toward whatever comes next. Because trench foot isn't dramatic. It's not a sudden explosion or a gunshot wound. It's slow, quiet, inevitable. A silent agreement between your body and the weather that you probably won't be needing that pinky toe much longer. And when someone finally asks how your feet are doing, you lie. Of course you do. You say fine. You say just damp. You say I've had worse, even though you haven't, even though you're not sure you'll be walking the same when this is over, assuming you're walking at all. But that's for later. For now, you just have to make it to lunch. If your boots let you. Your rifle is supposed to be your lifeline. That's what they told you back in training. This is your best friend. Take care of it, and it will take care of you. You believed that once. back when you were still shooting at paper targets and pretending it mattered. Now your rifle is more like a nervous roommate, temperamental, always cold, and increasingly unreliable under pressure. You carry the M1 Garand, standard issue, 8-round clip, semi-automatic, feeds from the top, looks great in posters, works fine in a museum. Out here, it's a gamble. The metal freezes in the cold. The action jams when snow gets inside. And the oil stiffens like candle wax. And if you're not careful, the bolt snaps shut on your thumb. A little gift from the army known as Grand Thumb. It's fast, sharp, humiliating, and always timed perfectly right before someone starts shooting at you. Every time you move, you check it. Not because you expect it to work, but because you're afraid it won't. You clear the chamber, rack the slide, tap the stock against your leg to shake out any ice. Then you do it again an hour later, because paranoia is the only thing more consistent than frostbite. Ammo comes in cardboard boxes that fall apart when they get wet, which is always. The clips rust, the rounds stick. Sometimes you try to load them with gloves on. That's funny. The bullets slip from your fingers, land in the snow, and vanish like they never existed. You spend the next 5 minutes digging them out while cursing everything from the war to the concept of fingers. You've got grenades too, a few anyway, baseball-sized, with little metal spoons on the side. Pull the pin, release the lever, throw. Sounds simple. It isn't. The pin jams if it's bent. The fuse sometimes burns too fast. And the last guy who tried throwing one from behind a snowbank didn't make it past pulled a pin. Now there's a black mark in the snow where his foxhole used to be, and nobody wants to talk about it. There's also the bazooka. Not yours, but you've seen it in action. A big, dumb tube that fires a rocket the size of your arm. In theory, great against tanks. In practice, it backfires if you're too cold, too wet, or too unlucky. One misfire and the only thing you're disabling is your own hearing. It takes 2 guys to carry it, and both of them usually wish they were doing anything else. You've got a sidearm maybe, a 45, if you're an officer. If you're not, don't worry. You'll find one eventually, probably next to someone who isn't using it anymore. The pistol is supposed to be your last line of defence, but unless you're within 6 feet of your target and they're kind enough to stand still, it's mostly psychological. You point it, you shoot, you hope, or maybe you just wave it around to feel like you're not totally defenceless. Maintenance is a full-time job you do part-time, usually while squatting in a foxhole and pretending you're not about to get shelled. You've got a rag, a tiny bottle of oil, and whatever piece of old t-shirt you haven't already sacrificed to cleaning mud off your boots. You strip the rifle down by memory, swabbing the barrel while muttering under your breath. It doesn't help. The moisture creeps back in the second you finish. The machine guns are loud, heavy, carried by a guy you don't envy. The tripod alone weighs more than your whole pack. And when they fire, it draws attention. Artillery doesn't like machine guns. The Germans don't like machine guns. Even the trees seem to get nervous. The guy manning it is usually exhausted, deaf, and sweating through 4 layers of winter gear while trying to reload without catching frostbite between belts. And then there's the ammo shortages. Always. You're told to conserve rounds. Don't waste shots. Make every bullet count. It's easy advice to give from behind a desk. Harder to follow when someone's shooting at your head and your rifle decides now is a good time to act like a decorative stick. Resupply is inconsistent at best. Maybe a crate comes in tonight, maybe it doesn't. If it does, you dig through it like a raccoon in a dumpster, hoping for dry rounds, a new clip, maybe even a cleaning kit that hasn't already been cannibalised by the last 10 guys who opened it. You trade cigarettes for spare 30 or 6 rounds. You hoard what you can. You beg, borrow or steal from whatever pile of gear gets left behind after the next patrol fails to check in. You've seen what happens when someone runs dry. The look on their face when they pull the trigger, and nothing happens. The moment of silence that follows is not dramatic, just quiet, resigned. Like they knew this day would come, they reach for another clip. It's not there. They curse, duck, run, pray, not necessarily in that order. You try to avoid that moment. You double check your belt, tap every pouch, count clips like a gambler counting cards. Still doesn't guarantee anything, because when the shooting starts, all your careful planning disappears. You fire, you duck, you reload, you jam a clip in upside down and swear until your fingers stop shaking. Nothing's reliable out here. Not the rifle, not the ammo, not even the guy next to you, who's still figuring out which end of his Thompson points forward. You've seen more gun malfunctions than actual kills. You've seen rounds misfire, eject into the snow, or disappear into the ether like they were never real. You've seen guns freeze shut. You've seen them explode. You've seen them dropped, kicked, lost, stolen, and once, somehow, boiled. It's not that the weapons are bad, they're just tired, same as you. Dragged through too many days of cold, soaked in mud, jammed with pine needles and ash and blood, and everything else the Ardennes has to offer. They weren't built for this. Neither were you, but you keep cleaning them. You keep loading the clips. You keep oiling the bolts. Because the alternative is standing out here with nothing but a shovel and a bad attitude. And there's only so much damage you can do with sarcasm. So you check the chamber, you pat your pouches, you sling the rifle back over your shoulder, knowing full well it might let you down when you need it most, and you keep walking. Because the Germans aren't waiting for your equipment to feel ready. They've already got theirs loaded. You find out during a patrol, or maybe during a prisoner transfer, doesn't matter. 1 minute you're watching 2 German soldiers with their hands up, shuffling past the line. The next, you notice it, thick wool cloaks, lined with something that might as well be dreams. Their uniforms look warm, their boots look dry, and slung over their shoulders. Actual blankets, real ones, soft, grey, clean, folded like someone back home still believes in dignity. You look down at your own blanket, if you're still calling it that. It's crusted on the edges, damp in the middle, smells like a mixture of smoke, feet, and whatever your Foxhole partner coughed up last night. It's not soft. It's not warm. It's a rectangle of damp sadness wrapped around a layer of disappointment. You wrap it tighter anyway. Not because it helps, but because the alternative is letting the cold win without a fight. You weren't issued a second one. Some guys were. Some weren't. Supply logistics in a war zone are like playing fetch with a dog that doesn't know you exist. You make do. You fold it double if you can. Sleep on half and cover yourself with the other, knowing full well it does neither job well. You stuff the edges into your coat to block the wind. You drape it over your shoulders during watch, and pretend you're not slowly turning into a very cold statue of a very tired man. The Germans, though, they came prepared. Some of them, not all, but enough to make you notice. You hear stories. Prisoners with warm socks. Layers. Gloves that fit. Some even had scarves knitted by people who still had time to knit. You joke about asking them where they got it. Then you realise you're not really joking. It's not just about comfort. It's what it represents. Someone thought they mattered enough to stay warm. Someone designed their gear like survival was part of the plan. Meanwhile, you're wearing a jacket that fits like a wet paper bag and trying to fall asleep under something that feels like carpet from a condemned hotel. You start thinking about trading. 1 blanket for 2 cartons of cigarettes, 3 for a working lighter, and a new pair of socks. You don't say it out loud, but you think about it. Someone tried stealing one once, from a dead German soldier. Took the blanket off the body, rolled it up, stuffed it under his coat, carried it for a day and a half before someone caught the smell and made him throw it away. Turns out, death clings to fabric. He said it was worth it anyway. Best sleep he'd had in a month. You start noticing the difference in the little things. German packs are better balanced. Their boots seem more waterproof. Their canteens have working caps. Their overcoats are heavier, thicker, made from wool that wasn't purchased in bulk by the lowest bidder in peacetime America. Some of their uniforms even have built-in liners. Yours doesn't. Your jacket absorbs moisture like a sponge, freezes solid by morning, and makes a crunching sound when you bend your elbows. There's a rumour going around about captured supply caches. Cases of enemy winter gear, socks, blankets, overcoats. Someone swears they saw a guy from another unit wearing a German parka. No one knows what happened to him. Maybe he got sent to the rear. Maybe he froze to death with better fashion sense. Either way, you wish you'd found it first. You're not angry. Not really. You're too cold to be angry. Too tired to feel cheated. But you notice. Every time you pull your blanket tighter, and your breath fogs against the inside of your collar. Every time you lie awake in your foxhole, listening to the guy next to you wheeze through another coughing fit. Every time the wind slips through the seams of your gear and reminds you that the elements don't care which side you're on, only how prepared you were to face them. And you weren't. You think about how much of your day revolves around temperature. Getting warm. Staying warm. Protecting warmth. Fire becomes currency. Dry socks become legend. A decent blanket becomes the dividing line between a soldier and a statistic. You'd trade your rifle for another layer some nights. You'd trade your dog tags if you thought it'd get you an hour of real sleep without shivering hard enough to shake your teeth loose. You've tried improvising, wrapping rags around your ankles, lining your helmet with spare cloth, stuffing pine needles between your jacket and shirt to trap heat. It's all guesswork. Some of it helps. Most of it just itches. One guy found a piece of tarp and wrapped himself in it like a burrito. Said it kept the wind out. Also trapped the moisture in. By morning, he was soaked through and steaming like a corpse on a grill. So you settle back into your routine. 1 blanket, 1 uniform, 1 long, unbroken conversation with the cold. You curl into yourself. You cover your face. You hold your breath to trap heat. You count the minutes until sunlight. Even though it won't bring warmth. Just visibility. You stop caring how it looks. You gave up on looking like a soldier about 5 days ago. Now you just want to look like someone who might survive the night. And when you hear the next round of artillery echo through the trees, when the ground trembles and the snow shakes off the branches above, you pull that blanket tighter, like it might do something. It doesn't. But it's all you have. The enemy has better blankets, You have a thin sheet of wool, a rifle that jams, and a hope that the snow doesn't cave in your foxhole while you sleep. Guess which side feels warmer, and tomorrow it starts again. You don't get used to the noise. Not really, you just learn to flinch quieter. There's no such thing as silence anymore. Even when it's technically quiet, there's always something humming underneath it. Your breath, your heartbeat, the faint rustle of someone shifting beside you, or the creak of branches overhead, groaning under the weight of snow, and whatever ghosts haven't left yet. It starts with artillery. That's the main act. You never see it, but you hear it. Distant at first, like a cough on the horizon, then closer, then all at once. A sharp whistle. A pause that lasts too long. Then impact. The ground doesn't explode as much as it disappears. Dirt and snow leap skyward. Everything shakes. Your ribs rattle. Your ears go dull. Someone next to you yells something. Or maybe it's you. But it's lost in the reverb. Sometimes it lands far away. Sometimes not far enough. You don't stick your head out to check. You just listen. Count the seconds between blasts. And hope your foxhole isn't next on the list. Sometimes it is. Sometimes the blast hits a tree, and then it's not just dirt raining down, but wood, ice, and metal from somewhere you don't want to think about. Then there's the machine gun fire. It doesn't echo. It snaps. Fast. Repetitive. Like someone slapping sheet metal with a sledgehammer. Bursts of it, usually in the early hours. Sometimes it's aimed at you. Sometimes it's aimed at a shadow no one ever confirms. But it's there. Always there. The rhythmic reminder that someone, somewhere in the woods, is still awake and still angry. Rifles crack too. Higher pitched, sharper. You learn to tell the difference. M1 Garand, Carabiner, Bar, MP40. It becomes a twisted language. You know who's talking by the tone of their bullets. Mortars whistle before they land. That's your warning. A quick, descending wheeze, like the world inhaling a one last time. You duck before you hear the thud. If you don't, you might not hear anything again. One guy lost his hearing on day 3 and didn't know it for hours. He just kept nodding like he understood, smiling when someone gave him rations. Turns out, he thought they were asking him if he needed water. Night is the worst. You'd think it'd be quieter. But it's when everything else stops that the little sounds come through louder. The shifting of boots in the snow, breathing, the metallic clink of someone reloading, the soft scratch of wool gloves brushing against a frozen rifle barrel. You try to ignore them. You can't. Then come the footsteps. Or maybe animals. Or maybe not. Could be a patrol. Could be nothing. Could be someone sneaking up to cut your throat in your sleep. You strain your ears until they burn. Hold in your breath like that will make your hearing sharper. You grip your rifle tighter. You wait. Nothing. Still nothing. Then a branch cracks nearby and you nearly piss yourself. There are voices too. Sometimes in English, sometimes in German. Sometimes half heard, half imagined. Someone yells a command in the distance. Someone else screams. Not a battle cry, not a cheer. Just a flat, sharp scream that cuts through everything. It stops abruptly. That's when it's worse. When the scream ends too soon. Sometimes you think you hear crying. Could be real. Could be wind. Could be a guy 2 foxholes down, trying to keep it quiet while he digs his fingers into the side of his face and pretends he's not falling apart. You want to help. You don't move. You stay curled up under your blanket, listening. Always listening. Sleep doesn't come easy. Not with that soundtrack. And when it does, it's shallow. twitchy. You dream in noise. Shells going off. Boots crunching. A voice yelling your name, but not your name. You wake up gasping, hands clenched, ears ringing. You don't even remember what startled you anymore. The dreams bleed into the day and back into the night. One guy started hearing things that weren't there. Said he heard piano music. Swore someone was playing Moonlight Sonata out in the woods. He was dead serious. Looked for it every night for 3 days. Then one morning he was gone. Some say he wandered off. Others say he walked into the trees and didn't duck when the next shell came in. Nobody checked. You try plugging your ears. Doesn't help. The sounds are inside now. In your head. In your chest. In your bones. Even when it's quiet, your body's still bracing. Muscles tense. Jaw clenched. Like it's waiting for the next bang, the next yell, the next time someone shouts, "Incoming!" And you all hit the dirt without thinking. Even if nothing comes, you do it anyway. The worst sound? Nothing. Total silence. When the guns stop. When the wind dies. When the forest goes still like it's holding its breath. That's when you know something's coming. An attack. An ambush. Or maybe just bad news wrapped in quiet. Because out here, silence isn't peace. It's the moment before everything breaks again. You miss background noise, radios, traffic, people talking about things that don't matter. Here, everything matters. Every sound, every click, every cough. You analyse it like it's going to decide whether or not you die today. And sometimes it does. You try to joke about it. Tell the new guy his first artillery strike is like your first kiss. Unforgettable, and usually a little wet. He doesn't laugh. You don't blame him. Nothing's funny after the third or fourth concussion wave knocks the air out of your lungs while you're mid-sentence. So you get used to the soundtrack of this war. Not because you want to, because you have to. Because if you don't, it'll chew through your nerves faster than frostbite. You learn to sleep through mortars, to eat through gunfire, to keep your hand steady even when the ground shakes and the air whistles like it's singing you off stage. But you never really stop listening. Even now, curled under your blanket, eyes half shut, ears half frozen, you're still counting the gaps between shelling, still cataloguing every footstep, every echo. Still wondering if that crack in the snow was a falling branch or the prelude to something worse. And the worst part is, you'll find out soon enough. Mail call doesn't come often, but when it does, everything stops. Even in the middle of cold, hunger, and whatever fresh hell the sky is preparing to drop on you, a letter from home is still enough to pull men out of foxholes like it's payday. Not because you expect good news. You don't. You just want something. Anything that isn't snow, bullets, or your own thoughts echoing around your frozen skull. The mail comes bundled in damp canvas bags, half frozen, half torn, passed down the line like a sacred relic. By the time it gets to you, it smells like fuel and wet wool, and the envelopes are creased in places that don't make sense. Sometimes they're already open. No one asks why. You don't want to know. Someone calls your name. Not your rank. Not your nickname. Your real name. The one you barely remember answering to anymore. You raise a hand, not too fast, and someone tosses an envelope at you like it's a ration bar. You catch it clumsily and stare at the handwriting for a moment before opening it. It's from your mother. Or your sister, or the girl who said she'd wait. Maybe she meant it, maybe she didn't. The envelope's thin, that's good. Thin means it's just a letter. No photos, no perfume, No pages of cheerful small talk you can't relate to anymore. You unfold the paper. It's been written in a warm kitchen somewhere, probably next to a fire. Probably with a cup of coffee nearby and the sound of a radio humming something cheerful in the background. You hate how easy it sounds. You hate that they think it helps. They ask how you're doing. They hope you're warm. They hope the food is good. They say the neighbours are praying for you. They say your old dog misses you. They say they watched a newsreel about the war and that it looks cold. You stare at that sentence for a long time. The ink is smudged near the bottom. A tear, probably. You're not sure if it was hers or yours. You rub your thumb over it anyway, like that'll change the words. It doesn't. It just makes your gloves damp again. Some guys get letters with pictures. Kids they haven't met yet. Fiancés in swimsuits. Girls smiling in front of palm trees. You'd think it would help. Something to live for, maybe. But it doesn't. It just makes the hole deeper. You look at the photo, then look at your hands. Cracked, filthy, shaking slightly. And you realise that version of you, the one in the photo with a clean shirt and a smile, doesn't exist anymore. Some letters don't say anything at all. Just, we miss you. Just, stay safe. Just, come home soon. Like it's that easy. Like it's just a matter of catching the right train. You watch guys read their mail and start laughing. Loud, too loud. Then fall silent halfway through a sentence. Others fold the letters carefully, tuck them into their chest pockets, and don't speak for the rest of the night. Some guys rip theirs up before finishing the first paragraph. Too much. Not enough. Who knows? Then there are the ones who don't get anything. They check anyway. Every time. Waiting for their name. Hoping for something with a return address. Anything. Even a mix-up. But nothing comes. And eventually they stop checking. They just sit there, silent, while the rest of you read news from a world that's still spinning without you. You try writing back. Once. Maybe twice. You scribble a few sentences in the dark, on damp paper, using a pencil that snapped 3 days ago, and now leaves ghost lines on the page. You say you're fine. You say you're staying warm. You say you miss them. You leave out the part where you saw a man die last week, trying to pull his buddy out of a collapsed trench. You leave out the trench foot, the rats, the cold that makes your nose bleed in your sleep. You just sign it, love, your name, and hope they believe it. Some guys write a lot, pages, front and back, every night. It's their ritual. Something to do with their hands besides loading a rifle or tightening a bootstrap. One guy wrote his wife every day for a month, then stopped. No one asked why. No one wanted to. When mail doesn't come, it's worse. Not because you expected anything specific, just because the silence starts to feel permanent. Like the world back home forgot how to reach you. Like you're already dead and just haven't gotten the memo. You tell yourself it's just weather. Just supply delays, just logistics, but you know better. You know there's a reason the bag came lighter this week. There always is. Every now and then, a guy gets a Dear John letter. That's when it gets real ugly. You've seen it happen twice. The guy reads it once, then again, then doesn't say a word for a full day. The next night, he volunteers for a patrol, the kind no one comes back from. The next morning, they find what's left of him near the tree line. Shot. Maybe by a German, maybe not. The letters remind you what you're missing. Family, warmth, dry socks, real food, a bed that doesn't collapse under your weight. But they also remind you how far gone you are, how much you've changed. How little of you still fits inside that house they describe, with the window boxes and the kitchen light always on. That version of you died somewhere between the 4th missed meal and the 3rd artillery barrage. What's left is just trying to stay vertical. Still, when the mail comes, you line up like everyone else. Even if you tell yourself you don't care, even if you mutter that it's just paper and lies, you still show up, you still hope, you still wait for your name to be called in a voice that hasn't cracked from cold and smoke. Because sometimes hope is worse than nothing, but not always. And tomorrow it'll snow again, and someone will read a letter under a broken lantern with gloved hands, smiling like it matters. Because out here, sometimes it does. You stopped smelling yourself 3 days ago. Not because the smell went away. It didn't. It just blended into everything else. Like background noise, but worse. You stink. Everyone stinks. The whole unit smells like a wool blanket soaked in body odour, grease, cigarette ash, canned meat, and wet socks boiled into one thick, sour fog that follows you like a personal curse. Bathing isn't just rare, it's not an option. It's cancelled, indefinitely. There's no shower tent, no warm basin of water, no soap, no privacy. You've been living in the same uniform for weeks now, and that's not changing anytime soon. If water touches your skin, it's because snow melted down your collar, or because you slipped into a ditch during a night patrol and didn't scream loud enough for someone to fish you out right away. You remember showers? Kind of. Real ones. With tile and hot water and actual shampoo that didn't come in a rusted tin. Now, your version of a wash is rubbing snow into your armpits behind a tree and pretending that counts as hygiene. It doesn't. It just makes your pits cold and your shirt wetter. Someone swears you can clean your skin with a handful of sand. Someone else says rubbing alcohol works in a pinch, if you can find any. You try not to think about it. You try not to touch your face. You try not to think about what's growing under your clothes. Your hands are black around the knuckles. Not bruised, just dirty. Permanently. No matter how many times you wipe them on your pants, the grime stays. Under the nails, in the creases of your fingers, along the edges of your palms, like a second skin you didn't ask for. The grease from the rifle, the dirt from the trenches, the residue from handling everything that hasn't been cleaned since last month. It's all there. You've stopped trying to scrub it off. Your hair is stiff, frozen some mornings, oily the rest of the time. If your helmet comes off, it stays in the same shape as your skull. Helmet hair is not a joke out here. It's a lifestyle. You scratch your scalp and come away with something under your nails that might be lice, or might be just another reminder that you haven't felt clean since you got off the boat. Beards have started to grow in. Not neatly, not intentionally, just uneven patches of stubble and mess. You were issued a razor once. It got lost in the shuffle between Belgium and despair. Someone still shaves. No one knows why. Maybe it's a control thing. Maybe he just doesn't want to feel like a walking scarecrow. Either way, the rest of you look like the before photo for a hygiene campaign nobody funded. Your boots smell worse than your body. They've been wet for so long, they've developed their own atmosphere. When you pull them off at night, if you dare, the steam that rises could probably be weaponized. You've stuffed newspaper in them. Didn't help. You've tried drying them by the fire. They caught smoke and absorbed it like sponges. Now they smell like wet fireplace and decaying leather. You still wear them. What else are you going to do? Underwear is a memory. Some guys have it, most don't. If you're lucky, you have one pair. So if you're not, you stopped thinking about that weeks ago. Your pants do all the work now. They're stained, soggy, crusted in places that don't need to be described. You've learned how to ignore discomfort that would have driven you insane back home. It's amazing what you can normalise when the alternative is freezing. There are no towels, no washcloths, no soap unless someone was smart enough to trade for it back in town. And if they were, they're hoarding it like treasure. You've seen men trade cigarettes for half-used bars. Not for the smell, just for the illusion of cleanliness. The hope that maybe, just maybe, you could rub the war off your skin for a few minutes and feel human again. The worst part is the itching. Not just from lice, not just from wool, from skin that's gone too long without a rinse. You scratch, constantly. Your arms, your sides, your legs under the waistband, your back, wherever you can reach. It doesn't help. Just opens up more cracks, more raw spots, more places for infection to sneak in and do its quiet work. You try not to think about what's living in the folds of your body. You've got a red patch on your thigh that wasn't there last week, a rash on your neck that comes and goes depending on the weather. Your armpits are a science experiment. One guy says his feet smell like cheese. Another swears he's growing mushrooms. Nobody laughs. There was a stream once. Clear water too. Cold, but not frozen. You thought about wading in. Maybe rinsing your shirt. Maybe splashing your face. Then someone pointed out the dead cow upstream and the fact that it had been used as a latrine by the last passing unit. That was the end of that. Even if you did manage to wash yourself, then what? You'd just be clean and wet, which is worse. Out here being dry is more valuable than being clean. Warmth trumps everything. A clean man shivering is still a dead man. So you stay filthy, safe under a crust of dirt, sweat and battlefield funk that doubles as armour against the elements. Sort of. Someone mentions a bathhouse, way back behind the line, 3 miles or so. Maybe it's still operational. Maybe there's hot water. Maybe they're handing out towels and actual soap. You listen, you nod. You tell yourself you'll go next time there's a rotation. But you won't. Nobody does. Because by the time you'd get there, your name's back on the roster for patrol. Or you're just too damn tired to move. And so you stay, in your foxhole, wrapped in wool, marinating in yourself. You scratch. You stink. You try not to think about the layer of grime you're carrying around, like a second uniform. This isn't temporary. This is standard. Bathing, out here, isn't just cancelled, it's extinct. You're not a medic. You didn't train to be one. You don't wear the Red Cross. You don't carry morphine. You can't tell a femur from a tendon. But that doesn't matter now, because the guy next to you just got hit, and you're the only one still upright. It doesn't happen like it does in movies. There's no dramatic scream, no slow motion fall. Just a sound, short, ugly, final. And then someone slumps over, groaning like they've dropped something minor. You look down. There's blood. A lot of it. Spilling into the snow like it's trying to soak the ground red before it freezes. You don't have time to think. You just move. You grab whatever's within reach. A scarf. A canteen. The tail of someone's shirt. Doesn't matter. You press it against the wound like pressure is magic. It's not. But it's all you know. The blood soaks through in seconds. You press harder. The guy grits his teeth and curses at you. That's good. He's still alive. You look around for a medic. Nothing. Maybe he's 3 foxholes over. Maybe he's already working on someone else. Maybe he's gone. Doesn't matter. You're it now. Your hands are shaking. You try to remember what they told you in basic. Pressure stops bleeding. Keep the wound above the heart. Don't let them fall asleep. You do none of those things correctly. Because nothing out here is calm. And the heart is wherever it wants to be when a man's laid flat in the snow, screaming your name with half his thigh blown open. You yell for help. Someone yells back, "Get him under cover!" That's a joke. You're already in a hole. The only thing covering you is thin canvas, snow, and the hope that whoever's shooting won't bother aiming low. You rip off your glove. Bad idea. Your hand goes numb immediately, but you need fingers that can feel, not mittens that smear everything. You reach for the bandage in his kit. Tear it open with your teeth. It's frozen. Of course it is. You warm it under your arm for half a second, then slap it down, wrap it, knot it. Too tight? Doesn't matter. Too loose? He bleeds out. So you pull until he yells again. Better than silence. Someone slides over with sulphur powder. You dump it on the wound like it's magic fairy dust. No one knows if it actually works. You just know that people get mad if you don't use it. Then you check for exit wounds, like you've seen other guys do. There's one, lower, worse. You wrap it too. There's not enough gauze, so you tear your own undershirt and shove it into the hole, praying your sweat-soaked cotton doesn't give him an infection on top of everything else. You hold his head. Tell him to breathe. He says something about his mother, then something about a dog, then nothing. You slap him. Not hard, just enough. His eyes flicker. He's still with you. Barely. You yell again. Someone throws you a morphine syringe. You fumble with the cap. Your fingers won't work. You jab it into his leg. Hope you picked the right spot. Hope you didn't hit something worse. Hope it doesn't stop his heart instead of his pain. You wait. His breathing slows. That's either good or bad. You tell yourself it's good. Then you wait. It takes 20 minutes for the medic to show up. Maybe 30. You're not sure. Time stretches in moments like this. Every second is another argument with the bleeding. Another whisper to a man who might not be listening anymore. The medic says you did okay. Then he says nothing else, just keeps working. You're not needed anymore. You move away and sit with your back against the side of the foxhole, your hands covered in blood, your gloves missing, your head empty. You don't sleep that night. Not because of gunfire, not because of cold, because your hands still smell like iron, and you're afraid if you close your eyes, he won't be there when you wake up. It's not the first time, won't be the last. You learn that quick. When the medic's not there, you are. When the guy across from you takes a round through the shoulder, you're the one wrapping his arm in your only clean shirt. When the new kid trips on a piece of shrapnel and opens up his knee, you're the one who gets handed the needle and thread. Not because you know what you're doing, but because no one else is left. No one talks about it later. They just nod at you. Maybe say thanks. Maybe nothing. You don't need thanks. You just need to not puke when you see blood again. You just need to not hesitate when the next guy drops. The field kits run low. The bandages are reused. The alcohol gets rationed. You start carrying extras. Not because anyone told you to, but because you know how it feels to run out in the middle of a disaster and have nothing but a bootlace and some blind faith to hold a man together. You ask the medic questions when you can. What's better for bleeding? Pressure or packing? How tight is too tight for a tourniquet? What colour means you're too late? he answers when he's got time, which isn't often. You start remembering things you never wanted to know. You've seen what untreated wounds look like, the infections, the swelling, the fever dreams. You know the smell. It's a mix of rot, sweat, and hopelessness. You can't describe it, but once you've caught it in the back of your throat, it never leaves. That's how you know when it's too late. That smell. You're not a medic, but you're carrying a roll of gauze, a half-used sulphur tin, and 2 morphine syrettes in your chest pocket anyway, just in case. Just until the next guy needs more than a bullet and a prayer. You used to think of medics as calm, professional, brave. Now you just think they're exhausted. Same as you, but with less time to be scared, and more blood on their hands. You haven't washed yours in a week, but the stains are still there. And you already know they're not coming off anytime soon. The guy who shot at you wasn't German. He was American. Probably just as cold, just as scared, just as confused as you were. Doesn't make it better. Doesn't make it stop burning when the round snapped past your head and buried itself in the tree behind you. The only reason you're still here is because his hands were shaking worse than yours. It happens more than anyone wants to admit. Fog, snow, bad maps, no comms. Somebody fires at a shadow, and then somebody else drops. You don't find out until after the dust settles and someone checks the tags. Same side, wrong target. It's not always gunfire. Sometimes it's artillery. You dig in deep, radio says hold tight, and then 30 seconds later, your own shells start falling short. You hear the whistle, the boom, and then the shouting. That's ours! That's ours! Doesn't help. Shrapnel doesn't care about allegiance. The sky just got the coordinates wrong. Again. The lines are a mess. The front isn't a line. It's a fog-covered suggestion. Units shift. Roads vanish under snow. Entire platoons get lost in the woods and pop up where no one expects them. You hear footsteps at night. Call out the password, and someone answers. Wrong. You hesitate. They hesitate. Somebody shoots. You find out the truth after someone's already bleeding. The snow makes everything worse. You can't see more than 10 feet. The trees all look the same. Tracks fill in minutes after they're made. You start to wonder if you're moving in circles. Someone lights a cigarette and the glow gives away your position. You all yell at him. He yells back. Nobody realises you're yelling in English until it's too late. One of your own squads opens fire from a ridge. 3 guys go down before anyone realises what's happening. Weather kills more men than bullets some days. Hypothermia, frostbite, pneumonia. Your breath freezes to the inside of your scarf. Your eyelids stick together when you blink too slow. You drop your canteen and the water inside shatters. You try to piss and your hand freezes to your zipper before you can even start. Snow hides things. Landmines, barbed wire, dead bodies. Whole squads buried under a drift. You step off the trail and disappear up to your ribs in white silence, arms flailing, rifle slipping from your shoulder. Someone has to dig you out while you try not to scream from the cold in your boots. When you get back to solid ground, your foot doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like anything. That's not good. Your coat froze shut yesterday. The sweat from marching seeped into the lining, then hardened overnight. You bent the zipper trying to get it open. Now it's stuck. You piss while kneeling. You sleep while wrapped like a burrito, with your arms inside your sleeves. You haven't moved your shoulder right in 3 days. Doesn't matter. Still better than getting shot by someone who didn't wait long enough for the password. There was supposed to be air support last week. A whole squadron. Fighters. Bombers. The works. They showed up. Late. Clouds rolled in. They couldn't see. They dropped a payload on the wrong side of the road. Nobody saw the funny side of it. One guy found a piece of the Jeep he used to ride in lodged in a tree trunk. It wasn't where he left it. You stop blaming people after a while. You start blaming conditions. The fog, the snow, the angle of the sun, your own brain, half frozen and half starved, misfiring under pressure. You tell yourself it wasn't their fault, it wasn't your fault, it was the war's fault. But that doesn't stop the bleeding. Doesn't take the hole out of the guy who got hit because someone thought his helmet looked too round in the snow. Some units wear scarves now. Red strips of cloth. Something to signal not a target. Doesn't always work. The Germans started wearing them too. That's what the higher up said anyway. Might be true. Might just be another reason to stop trying. Snow muffles sound. Gunshots feel distant. Screams don't echo. You don't hear the guy until he's right behind you, panting, saying he got separated. You point your rifle. He yells the password. You don't lower it. You've heard stories. Germans speaking perfect English. Fake patches. Real bullets. You shout at him. He shouts back. Someone else confirms he's from your unit. You both lower your weapons and pretend that moment didn't just happen. But it did. You won't forget it. Neither will he. Maps are soaked. Radios freeze. Batteries die. Directions change. The guy leading the patrol swears this is north. The guy behind him says that's west. You follow anyway. Not because you believe them, but because you don't have a better idea. You step carefully. You whisper. You breathe shallow. And you hope? Not that the enemy's gone, but that the next burst of fire isn't from your own side. When it's over, if it's ever over, no one will list the friendly fire under the casualty reports. They'll say combat related. They'll say in the fog of war. They won't say it was a kid from Michigan who shot his own lieutenant because he saw a silhouette that looked wrong through frozen goggles. The weather doesn't stop. The war doesn't slow down. Your gloves are soaked. Your rifle's frozen. Your squad's scattered across a patch of forest nobody can name. You don't know what day it is. You don't know if the guy ahead of you is from your unit. You don't ask. You just move slow. Watch your step. Keep your rifle low and hope the next trigger pulled isn't pointed at your back. And if it is, you'll probably never hear it anyway. The sound starts low, a distant rumble, not loud at first, just steady. You think it's thunder. You hope it's thunder. But then it keeps coming, keeps growing, and it starts to feel heavier, like the ground is chewing on itself. That's when someone says it. Tanks. You don't see them right away. You hear them before you do anything else. Engines roar like growling dogs. The treads snap through the crusted snow like it's paper. Then the silhouette shows up between the trees, low, squat, and moving like it doesn't care what's in front of it. Because it doesn't. It's a panzer. Or worse, a tiger. You don't know yet. Doesn't matter. You're infantry. All tanks are bad. You shift to move. You don't. Your legs aren't ready. They're stiff, numb, half asleep, half dead. You've been squatting in the snow for hours. The muscles in your thighs feel like stretched leather. The toes in your boots stop checking in around dawn. You tell them to move. They file a complaint. The tank gets closer. The lieutenant shouts something. You don't hear it. Your ears are still ringing from the last artillery strike. Someone grabs your arm, points. There's a trail out, a ditch, a ridge. You're not sure. You try to stand. Your legs disagree. You half crawl, half stumble behind a tree that won't stop anything but wind, and not even very well. The tank crests the hill. Dark green, patches of snow on the armour. Long barrel like a pointing finger, made of dread. A second one follows. Then a third. The ground trembles with every turn of their tracks. The trees creak. You swear the snow sinks lower. Your sergeant mutters, "We've got bazookas." You look around. One guy has the launcher. The other has the rockets. They're 30 feet apart and not on speaking terms. You think about helping them, then remember your hands are wrapped in socks because you lost your gloves last week pulling someone out of a frozen ditch. The tank stops, just sits there, like it's listening. Then the turret turns, slow, deliberate, scanning the tree line. You duck. You tell yourself you're hidden. You're not. There's no cover here. Just white snow and lies. Someone fires a shot. Useless. It pings off the armour like a pebble. The tank responds by rotating its barrel toward the sound. There's a flash. A crack. A tree disappears. The guys near it are just gone. Maybe they ducked. Maybe they didn't. You don't look too long. You're too busy crawling away from the crater where your sense of safety used to live. You've got a grenade? One. You think about trying to crawl closer. Try something dumb and heroic. Then you remember that tanks don't care about grenades. Not unless you're close enough to drop it inside the hatch. And you're not. You're infantry. Which, in tank terms, means target. The bazooka team finally gets their act together. You watch them set up behind a fallen tree. The loader shouts something. The shooter squints. They fire. Smoke and flame. The rocket whooshes forward. It hits the tank. Nothing. Just a scorch mark. You almost hear the tank shrug. The second one moves forward now. It's bigger. Louder. Heavier. The snow hisses under its weight like it's boiling. It's a tiger for sure. You recognise the squared-off armour, the thick barrel. The way it moves like gravity is just a suggestion. It's the kind of machine that was built specifically to make people like you question their life choices. You try to run. Try being the operative word. Your legs still aren't on board with this plan. One moves, the other drags. You stumble, fall, get back up. Your knee buckles. You catch yourself on a frozen bush. The ice tears open your glove. You don't care. You just need to move. Somewhere. Anywhere. Away from that thing. It doesn't chase you. It doesn't need to. It just keeps rolling forward, slow and certain, because it knows nothing out here can stop it. Not with what you've got. You're a guy with a rifle. Maybe a grenade. Maybe a prayer. The tank has 80 impulse shells, armour thicker than your future, and a commander who's probably not freezing half to death in a foxhole made out of broken hopes. Someone yells for artillery support. You don't hear it come. You never do. Sometimes it shows up. Sometimes it doesn't. This time, nothing. You're on your own. Your squad's scattered. Half of them behind trees, the rest behind the idea that tanks can't climb ridges. They can. You find that out about 30 seconds later when one of them does exactly that and fires point blank into a frozen hedgerow. After a while the tanks leave, just roll away, off to flatten someone else. You don't chase, you don't cheer, you just sit there, your legs finally cooperating just in time to collapse. You're shaking, not from fear, from adrenaline, from cold, from the realisation that if one of them had moved just 2 feet to the right, you'd be a stain in the snow. You look around, count heads, fewer than before. Someone's crying, someone else is laughing, short, sharp, wrong. You check your rifle. Doesn't matter. It wouldn't have helped. You think about writing this down, then realise you'd rather forget it, but you won't, because that sound, that grinding, crunching, rumbling steel roar, it's stuck in your spine now. You'll hear it in your dreams. Or maybe not dreams. Just the dark, when the snow falls and the silence is a little too quiet. And next time you hear it, you already know your legs won't be ready. After the tanks disappear and you've confirmed more or less that you're still breathing, the next thing that hits you is hunger. Not a little hungry. Not could use a snack hungry. Not haven't eaten since breakfast hungry. This is deeper. Hollow. A gnawing that feels like your own gut is turning against you out of spite. You could eat a shoe. You probably have. Or at least chewed the edge. So when word gets passed down that supply finally dropped rationed somewhere that hasn't been shelled into a crater, you start moving like a man with purpose. Every step is stiff, slow, cold, but the promise of food pushes you forward. Or maybe it's the memory of food. Real food. Not the flavourless paste you've been rationing out of dented cans for the last week. You get to the distribution point. A few crates, stamped metal, already half buried in snow. Someone's dug them out and pried one open with a bayonet. The guy handing them out looks like he hasn't slept since Roosevelt gave his last fireside chat. He doesn't even look at faces, just hands out 1 box per body and mumbles, "Don't ask for extras." You take yours. Cold to the touch. Feels like a brick. Says, meal, combat, individual. You've seen the outside before. What matters is what's inside. You sit down on a log, or maybe a rock, or maybe nothing at all, and pry open the can like it might contain hope. It doesn't. It contains fruitcake. You stare at it. It stares back. Officially, this is the B unit ration. Comes with biscuits, jam, some kind of spread that might be peanut butter if you squint and forget flavour exists. And, the star of the show, a block of fruitcake, vacuum sealed and dense enough to qualify as structural material. You peel back the lid. There it is. A brownish slab, suspiciously shiny, with multicoloured chunks that were once fruit but now resemble the kind of gravel used in industrial flooring. It smells vaguely sweet, vaguely metallic, and completely untrustworthy. You eat it anyway. It's awful. Not immediately awful. Not dramatic. Just bland. Wet. Like someone took cardboard, soaked it in corn syrup, and then dared a military contractor to make it worse. The fruit doesn't chew so much as resist. The cake part crumbles, but not in a satisfying way. More like insulation falling apart in your hands. Still, you eat the whole thing, every last crumb, because the alternative is hunger, and you're done with hunger. A guy next to you says he likes them, says they remind him of Christmas back home. You don't ask how bad his Christmases were. You just nod. You know better than to ruin anyone's illusion out here. If fruit cake gets him through the day, let him have it. Someone else smashes theirs with a rock and stirs it into instant coffee, says it softens the flavour. It doesn't. It just makes everything worse in a new direction. The coffee tastes like regret. The fruit cake tastes like someone else's memory. Together they taste like war. Still, you save the wrapper. Not because you care about trash, but because the foil lining makes a decent windbreak if you press it flat and shove it inside your jacket. Multi-purpose suffering. You remember reading somewhere that sea rations are engineered for maximum calories, minimum joy. They've succeeded. Every bite fills you, but it doesn't satisfy. Nothing out here satisfies. Not the food, not the sleep, not the boots that barely hold your feet anymore. But the cake is something. A chewable placeholder for the kind of food people used to enjoy before the world froze over. Sometimes you get lucky. A chocolate bar, a pack of gum, maybe a stick of that fake cheese product that melts when you look at it wrong. But most days? Most days it's this, a few crackers, a tin of processed meat that makes spam look like a delicacy, and the cake. You think about home, about real cake, warm, moist. You remember birthdays, frosting, candles. You remember sitting at a table without worrying who was watching from the tree line. You try not to think about that too long. Thinking gets dangerous when your stomach's full, and your hands are finally starting to thaw. Better to keep chewing. Some guys hoard their fruitcakes, trade them, stack them like bricks. One guy claims he used 4 to plug a hole in the wall of a blown out barn. They held. Another guy swears they're flammable. He might be right. Nobody's brave enough to test it near the ammo pile. You finish the last bite. Lick your fingers out of habit, even though they taste like rust and dirt and old tin sugar. Then you fold the tin closed, put it in your pack, and pretend that was lunch. Was it a meal? Technically. Was it joy? Not even close. But for the first time in days, you're not shaking from hunger. For the first time in hours, you've put something solid in your stomach that isn't snow or bitterness. You're still cold, still tired, still dreading the next patrol. But you ate. And today that's enough. Even if it was fruitcake, if it was. You're out here. That much you're sure of. You know your name. You know your unit, probably. You know it's cold. You know the trees are full of things that want you dead. Everything else? Up for debate. Nobody actually knows what's going on. Your orders were vague. Move to this point. Hold that road. Dig in near the ridge. Maybe it was a ridge. Maybe a creek. Could have been a crossroads. The map they gave you is 2 inches too small and 5 days out of date. Roads don't exist anymore. They're suggestions buried under snow, cratered by artillery, or clogged with abandoned vehicles and frozen corpses. You were told to follow the red line. That line disappeared halfway through the forest, and now you're following boot tracks you hope belong to someone on your side. The radio works. Sometimes. The guy who carries it has been shot at more than anyone else. Partly because he's always yelling into a giant metal box. Partly because it makes him the most valuable, and therefore the most cursed man in the squad. When the signal gets through, it's static, clipped words, code names that don't match what's in front of you. Panther 3, this is Doghouse, means nothing when Doghouse doesn't answer, and Panther 3 just got blown apart in the last ambush. You ask questions. No one has answers. Not your sergeant, not your lieutenant. Definitely not the guy next to you who's 19, from Indiana, and hasn't slept in 3 days. Everyone's just guessing. You're moving through white trees, your boots crunching in old tracks, hoping the guy you follow isn't leading you in circles. He might be. You're too tired to care. Maps get passed around, photocopied, marked with pencil. Half the landmarks are gone. Bridges destroyed. Buildings flattened. Villages evacuated, or burned, or both. You're told to secure a farmhouse that doesn't exist anymore. You're told to hold a hill that isn't on the map. You're told to expect resistance, so and then ambushed by tanks no one said were nearby. You're told a supply drop is coming. It doesn't. Or it lands 10 miles off target and ends up in enemy hands. You march an entire day for a crate of blankets the Germans probably opened while laughing. The officers don't know either. You see it in their eyes. Behind the confidence and clipped commands, they're just as lost. Some of them came straight from desk jobs or training bases. The only thing they've led before this was a PowerPoint presentation or a weekend drill. Now they're walking ahead of 20 guys with frozen rifles and no clear plan. You try not to think about how many people have died because someone read the map upside down. Intelligence says the enemy is retreating. That's a lie. You saw the movement last night. Tanks, infantry, machine gun nests dug into hills that weren't supposed to be occupied. You're not chasing. You're being surrounded. You say this. No one listens. Or if they do, they nod like you just reminded them what day it is. Then they tell you to keep marching. You pass units you've never seen before. Some speak English, some don't. One group wears American uniforms, but stares at you like you're the ones who don't belong. You consider raising your rifle. They consider it too. Everyone lowers their weapons without speaking. Sometimes someone mentions higher command. That mythical group behind the front lines who's coordinating everything. You imagine them sitting in a warm tent with charts and radios and dry socks, sipping coffee while drawing lines on maps they assume still reflect reality. They don't. Out here, those lines are erased by snow, shellfire, and men who disappeared trying to follow them. Scouting reports are mostly fiction. If someone says there's no enemy presence ahead, you assume there's at least a platoon. If they say there's light resistance, get ready for a meat grinder. If they say the road is clear, expect landmines. If they say you'll have air support, duck anyway. Odds are it'll be late, lost, or aiming the wrong direction. Even when you do get intel, it changes by the time you act on it. The enemy's fluid, mobile, smarter than anyone wants to admit. They move faster than your supply lines, know the terrain better than your maps, and have been digging into these forests since before you shipped out. They know where to ambush, where to disappear, where to hit you so hard and so fast that the only thing you can do is freeze. Not from fear, but from sheer operational whiplash. You start learning the truth from rumours. The kid on sentry duty says another unit got wiped out 2 clicks west. Your squad leader heard an officer was captured and spilled the whole battle plan. The medic says the next town is already lost, but command hasn't caught up yet. You file it all away. It's probably wrong. But at least it feels more useful than another briefing with diagrams that don't match what you saw this morning. There was supposed to be a counterattack. You heard the date. Everyone did. We'll push them back by then. The date came and went. The line didn't move. But you did. Into colder forests. Into deeper snow. Toward another rendezvous that never materialized. Now you're sitting in a hole wondering if anyone even remembers you're here. You learn to stop asking for updates. They just make you angry. You trust what you can see. Boot prints, smoke in the distance, the feel of artillery through the ground before you hear it. You follow the guy in front of you because he seems to know where he's going. You don't ask how he knows. You don't want to know if he's guessing. And when someone tells you you're retreating, you just nod. You already figured that out when the guy with the radio stopped calling in your position and started asking about escape routes. You're out here, and nobody really knows where here is. But the snow keeps falling, and the war keeps going. And if someone ever figures out the plan, you hope they write it down, just so you can laugh at how far off it ended up being. Digging is something you never thought you'd have opinions about, but now you do. You know the difference between good dirt and bad dirt. You know frozen ground sounds different under a shovel than mud. You know when a hole is deep enough to maybe stop shrapnel, and when it's just a shallow grave waiting to happen. You know the sound of a pickaxe hitting frozen soil, and you know how much of your soul dies every time it bounces back without leaving a dent. You dig because they tell you to, because cover saves lives, because foxholes are your only house now. Not for comfort, there's none of that out here, but for survival. You dig to hide, to sleep, to wait, to not die when the next shell screams in from somewhere over the hill and lands closer than it's supposed to. It takes hours, even longer when the ground is frozen solid, which is always. Your shovel breaks the surface and scrapes out chips of frostbitten dirt, each scoop like pulling teeth from the planet. Your gloves are too stiff to grip anything properly. Your fingers go numb halfway through. The guy next to you starts coughing halfway through his hole. You keep going. You can't afford not to. The snow works against you. It covers the ground you just cleared, fills the hole while you're still in it, blows sideways into your face until you can't see your own knees. The wind doesn't care how tired you are. You dig anyway. Once it's deep enough, if it's ever deep enough, you crawl in like a rat. You curl up. You stare at the sky, or the inside of your helmet, or nothing. There's usually nothing. You pull your blanket tight, even though it doesn't help. You try not to move. Movement lets the cold in. You try not to sleep too deep. Sleeping too deep means not waking up. You wait. That's the second skill you learn out here. Waiting. You're not moving, not attacking, not going home, just waiting. For orders, for sunrise, for the enemy, for nothing, for something. You sit in the hole you dug and pretend there's a point to it. Sometimes you hear noises, distant gunfire, boots crunching, trees creaking, and you sit up fast, heart pounding, hands shaking as they reach for your weapon. But nothing happens. It's just the forest reminding you it's still watching. You settle back down, still waiting. Your legs cramp. Your back aches. Your butt is numb. Your coat stiffens with frozen sweat. The bottom of the hole collects moisture, and your feet soak in it for hours. You know trench foot is coming. You smell it before you feel it. Doesn't matter. You're not climbing out unless someone tells you to. One guy never dug his hole deep enough. Took shrapnel in the gut during a barrage. They pulled him out in pieces. After that, everyone dug a little deeper. No one complained anymore. Everyone knew what not deep enough looked like. You try talking to pass the time. Quietly. Voices low. You talk about home, about food, about women, about baseball. The words hang in the frozen air like breath, then disappear. Nobody really listens. You're all just filling silence. Sometimes there's no talking, just the scrape of shovels, the rattle of gear, the occasional grunt when someone hits a root. You learn to hate roots. They're stronger than frozen dirt and twice as persistent. You get creative, build a shelf in your hole, a seat, a notch to rest your rifle. Someone figures out how to use an ammo box as a stool. Someone else lines their foxhole with canvas to keep the wind out. It works until it doesn't. Then it rips, and they start over. Out here, engineering is desperation wearing a uniform. Every now and then, someone gets assigned to a listening post. That's when waiting turns into something worse. You crawl forward into the dark, dig a smaller hole, and sit still. No noise, no light, no movement. You listen for enemy patrols, for whispering voices in a language you barely recognise, for the sound of snow shifting under someone else's boots. And if you hear it, you don't fire, you don't speak, you wait harder. And if they don't hear you, you crawl back, dig deeper, and start again. Day turns to night, then back to day. The sun doesn't warm anything. The moon doesn't light anything. Time just passes. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe you're just sitting in the same position for so long that you've started to hallucinate movement. Someone falls asleep in his hole and doesn't wake up. Hypothermia. Heart stopped sometime before sunrise. They find him curled like a question mark. Blanket pulled up to his chin like he expected to make it. Someone else gets out to piss and never comes back. Maybe he got lost. Maybe he got hit. Maybe the snow swallowed him. You don't leave your hole unless someone makes you. That's the rule now. The ground around your foxhole is packed with prints. Every night it looks different. You start seeing things in the snow. Shapes, outlines, drag marks. Sometimes it's from the enemy. Sometimes it's from your own men hauling out a body. You stop trying to tell the difference. You learn to hate waiting. But you also learn it's better than moving. If you're moving, you're a target. If you're digging, you're prepping for something. But if you're still, really still, maybe they won't see you. Maybe you'll get to see tomorrow. And if not, well, at least your hole's already dug. You see the first one before anyone says a word. He's walking toward your position. Alone, unarmed. No helmet. Hands raised, dirty white cloth tied to a stick, held overhead like a question. His coat's American. The man inside it isn't. German, thin, tired, hollow-eyed. His lips are cracked. He's shivering, but not from the cold. From something deeper. He keeps saying "camarade" in a soft, nervous loop. No weapon, no gear. Just him and the clothes he's been surviving in. Someone covers him with a rifle. Someone else frisks him. He doesn't resist. He doesn't look like a soldier. He looks like a guy who gave up. You've been thinking about that option too. Not seriously. Not yet. But it's there. Parked somewhere in the back of your brain next to all the things you'd rather not admit. You don't talk about it out loud. But you do the math. Every man does. Surrender and survive. Maybe in a camp. Or stay here and roll the dice every time the sky whistles and the trees explode. There's a guy in your unit who used to make jokes about it. Said if it gets any colder, he'd walk to the German line and ask for a blanket. Everyone laughed. Then he stopped joking. One morning he was just gone. Left his rifle, left his pack, left his boots, pointed toward the tree line. Nobody said it out loud. Everyone thought it. He gave up. The problem is, giving up and being captured don't always look different. Sometimes it's a man who got surrounded, ran out of ammo, got knocked out by a shell, and woke up in the wrong uniform. Other times, it's quieter. He's cold. He's tired. He walks toward the enemy with his arms raised, not because he wants to defect, but because he doesn't have anything left in him to keep fighting. There's no ceremony to it, no shouting, no running, just a man walking out of line and into the unknown, hoping the people on the other side aren't in the mood to shoot today. It's not cowardice, not exactly. It's something else. Resignation. Exhaustion. A moment where the need to survive outweighs the need to win. You've felt it in your own bones, lying in your hole, listening to artillery and wondering how much longer you can stay in one piece without losing your mind. Your own command doesn't talk much about prisoners. When they do, it's brief. If you're captured, don't talk. Don't cooperate. Try to escape. But that's not a plan. It's a sentence. Try to escape means good luck with frostbitten feet and no idea which direction home is. Don't talk means stay alive while pretending you're still in control. Most men never get the chance to apply any of it. They either survive or disappear. Very few come back. You've seen what capture looks like on our side too. A German kid, couldn't have been older than 16, pulled from a snowbank with his hands above his head, trembling, trying to speak English. Nobody shot him. Nobody saluted either. They just took his weapon, his coat, and gave him a blanket that smelled like mould and defeat. He didn't cry. He didn't beg. He just stood there, looking smaller than anyone should look in a war this big. Some prisoners are tough. Officers. SS. They walk with straight backs and dead eyes. No fear, no apologies. You hate them more than the bullets. But most? Just men. Same as you. Same filthy hands. Same ruined boots. Same broken stare. You realise, looking at them, you could trade places and it wouldn't look much different. You ask yourself how far it would have to go. How much hunger? How many days without sleep? How much blood would have to come out of your leg before surrender starts sounding like a plan instead of a sin? You don't know the answer, but you know you're closer to it than you were a month ago. Some guys say they'd never let themselves be taken. Say they'd fight to the last round. Say they'd pull the pin on a grenade and take the enemy with them. Those guys sleep just as bad as the rest of you. Some of them mean it. Most are bluffing. Maybe not to you, but to themselves. The truth is, out here, the line between surviving and giving up is a thin one. Paper thin. Snow-covered. It shifts day to day. One morning you're crawling forward under fire because someone yelled the order. The next, you're staring at the forest, thinking about how warm a prison camp might be, even with the barbed wire and the German guards. You haven't crossed that line, not yet, but you've looked at it, and you know what it means to be close. They keep saying it's almost over. Command says the tide is turning. The radio says reinforcements are on the way. Headquarters drops words like momentum and breakthrough, like they're trying to brand the war as a product launch. But you've been hearing that for weeks, and out here it still looks the same. Trees, snow, holes, death. The only tide you've seen lately is blood soaking into a hill no one can pronounce. Liberation is coming, they say. Sure, maybe it is. But if it is, it's not coming fast, and it's not coming free. It's crawling over frozen ground behind a wave of wounded, and it's tripping over corpses on the way in. If liberation's on the horizon, it's wearing a bandage and dragging one leg. The guys in the back think it's already here, the ones behind the lines, the ones with real boots and working radios. They talk like the battle's over, like we just need to mop up resistance. They don't see the mortar shell that landed 2 feet from your Foxhole yesterday. They don't smell what's left of the guy you had to dig out of a collapsed trench with a mess kit in your bare hands. You're still fighting, still losing people. 5,000 dead between now and the next checkpoint. That's the math you've learned to live with. It's not official. Nobody writes it down. But it's real. You count casualties the same way other people count footsteps. 1 here, 2 there, a dozen in that ravine. Every ridge you take costs you 3 friends. Every town you liberate is just another pile of bricks with a church tower sniped out and a school turned into a command post. There's no fanfare, no flags waving, no brass bands. You walk into a village that was supposed to be full of cheering civilians, and instead it's full of rubble, silence, and one old man who doesn't speak English and doesn't trust you not to break what's left. You sleep in the ruins of his barn, and the next day the barn is gone too. Artillery caught up. Someone tells you Paris is safe. You nod like that matters. You're still 200 miles away, surrounded by trees that look like tombstones and snow that buries more than footprints. You haven't seen anything safe in months. You barely believe in it anymore. You've stopped marking time by dates. The calendar doesn't help. No holidays out here. No Sundays. Just cold, then colder. Then maybe a day where the wind shifts enough to stop biting your face raw. That's your break. That's your reward for still being upright. You hear numbers sometimes. The enemy is losing ground. The Germans are pulling back. They're out of fuel. They're desperate. But desperate men fight harder. They dig in deeper. They booby-trap roads. They fake surrenders. They fire at medics. If they're losing, they haven't noticed. Or maybe they have, and they just don't care how many they take with them. Every time someone says the word liberation, you think about the last guy who said it with confidence. He took a round through the neck 20 minutes later. No one's used the word out loud since. It's cursed now. You think it, you don't say it. What you say instead is, we hold until morning, or we rotate out after this ridge, or replacements are coming soon. All of it may be true. All of it may be lies. You don't ask anymore. You just look down the line and see who's still breathing. Someone heard the war could be over by spring. Maybe. If the front holds. If the enemy cracks. If the weather doesn't kill us first. Spring's just another word for wait longer. You're not sure you'll recognise it when it comes. Flowers don't bloom in frozen forests. And the only thing that thaws out here is your resolve. Slowly, painfully, and only when it's too late. 5,000 more dead. That's what's between you and the finish line. And you're not sure if that number includes you or not. Some days you hope it doesn't. Some days you're too tired to care. Liberation is real maybe, but it's not here yet. And you're not leaving until it steps over a mountain of boots and helmets and broken rifles just to reach you. So you keep digging in. Keep watching the trees. Keep waiting for the sound of one more shell. One more shout. One more bad piece of news from a man who swore this sector was quiet. You stay low. You stay cold. You stay alive. At least for now. You survive. Somehow. Not by choice. Not because you're brave or lucky or built for this. You survive because you kept moving when you should have stopped. And you stayed still when you probably should have run. You survive because your name didn't show up on the wrong list, in the wrong place, at the wrong time. No ceremony, no medals waiting. Just one day where no one shoots at you, and the only thing falling from the sky is snow that might actually stop sometime soon. The orders stop coming. The tanks stop rumbling. The Germans pull back. And then, silence. Not peace. Just the absence of noise. You don't even know it's over until 3 days later, when a jeep rolls through with some guy yelling in 2 directions at once about relocation and regrouping. And even then, nobody moves. Nobody cheers. Everyone just kind of looks at each other like, that's it? Because it doesn't feel like a win. It feels like what it is. The war didn't take you this time. You stand up. You stretch. Your back pops like breaking twigs. You haven't straightened your legs all the way in weeks. The inside of your boots feel like cardboard. Your socks are fused to your skin. You try to peel one off, and half your foot comes with it. That's when you notice. The toes are wrong, blackened in places, swollen in others. One's kind of soft, like a marshmallow someone dropped behind a radiator. You think maybe it's just frostbite. It is, kind of. Then you tug your sock off all the way and realise your toenails are still in the sock. All of them. Just stuck there like they decided they'd had enough and got off at the last stop. You stare. You blink. You laugh a little. It's not funny, but it is. Somehow, in a war where bullets missed your head, mortars missed your hole, tanks didn't crush you, and snipers somehow looked the other way, your toenails didn't make it. They're done. They retired. No big wound. No heroic scar. Just 10 tiny casualties of cold, wet boots and weeks of no change, no rest, no care. Your feet look like they belong to someone else. Someone with worse luck and worse hygiene. You wiggle your toes, or what's left. They still work, barely. You figure that counts for something. You're moved to the rear. A real bed, sort of. A cot in a tent. Heated even. Someone gives you clean socks. They feel like silk. Someone else gives you a can of peaches. You almost cry. Not because of the peaches. Because someone handed you something without shouting first. You see a doctor. He doesn't say much. Looks at your feet, nods. Says they'll probably grow back. You ask when. He says, eventually. You believe him. What choice do you have? He gives you a tin of ointment that smells like sadness and menthol, tells you to keep them dry, then moves on to the next guy who's missing more than toenails. You watch the rest of your unit shuffle in. Some are limping, some bandaged, some grinning for no reason other than they still have teeth to show. Nobody looks like the guy who left camp 6 weeks ago. Everyone's lost something. Weight, warmth, a piece of themselves. You? You lost toenails. Could have been worse. You try to sleep. It's hard. The bed feels too soft. The quiet is too loud. You miss the background hum of shared misery. Miss the crackle of the radio. Miss the guy next to you, snoring like an idling tank. It's not nostalgia. It's conditioning. You got used to the wrong things, and now the right ones feel foreign. You write a letter home. Try to explain what it was like. You don't. You talk about the cold, about the snow. You say food was bad, but you ate. You say people died, but not you. You don't mention the toenails. You don't mention the frozen mornings where you thought about walking into the woods and never coming back. You just say you're fine. That's the truth, more or less. Eventually they send you farther back, somewhere with a roof and real walls. They talk about reassignment, rest, maybe even going home. You nod. You say yes. You try to believe it. Your feet start healing. Slowly, ugly at first. New nails grow in strange, thick, off-centre. You cover them with socks and don't look too often. They're a reminder. Not of the war, but of what it cost you to survive it. Not everything comes back. Not clean. Not whole. But you're still breathing. And that's how the Battle of the Bulge ends for you. Not in a blaze of glory, not in a headline, not in a clean story with a neat ending. Just you. Alive, with bad feet. And the quiet knowledge that sometimes that's all you get. And that's it. You made it through. Somehow. Not the war. Just this retelling of it, which, honestly, is the easier version. If you're still awake, congratulations. You've now survived frostbite, friendly fire, fruitcake, and the slow unravelling of morale at 30 below. If you're asleep, good. That was the point. Maybe your dreams will be warmer than the Ardennes. Thanks for spending part of your night here. In a foxhole, under snow, next to a guy who snores through artillery. Sleep well. You've earned it.